Social conditions. The story highlights the rigid yet fragile social structures of the time. So divine kingship. The Pharaoh is the sun. Without him, the world falls into darkness. So Senuhe's flight is a reaction to the vacuum of power. Class and identity. So Senuhe is a courtier, a high-ranking official. Even in exile, he maintained his status, but he feels the loss of his Egyptianness, symbolized by his bird and heavy foreign clothes. Hospitality versus hostility. The social world of the Near East is depicted as a series of tribal alliances where a man's worth is measured by his skill in battle and his ability to prove or his people. So there are 5 kinds of plot stage art. First is exposition. So Senuhe is on a military expedition when he learns of the Pharaoh's assassination, overwhelmed by a divine panic. So he flees to Egypt. So while on a military mission, hears that Pharaoh has been assassinated, filled with a divine panic about the resulting power of vacuums. So he decided to flee Egypt. Number 2, rising action. So after nearly dying in the desert, he is rescued and settles in Rit-Jino. So he becomes a wealthy chieftain, raises a family, and proves his bravery by defeating a local giant in a duel. So it means Senuhe's life exile that after surviving the desert, he settles in a land called Rit-Jino. So where he becomes a successful leader and starts a family and also he gains kind of fame by defeating a local giant in a duel. So he defeated a giant in the duel. Number 3, climax. Senuhe reaches old age. So he realized that despite his success, he is miserable because he is not in Egypt. He receives a letter from Pharaoh Senuhe I and offering full pardon and royal invitation to return. So as Senuhe reaches old age, so he realized that his foreign success cannot replace his longing for home. So the turning point occurs that when he receives a letter from the new Pharaoh Senuhe I that offering him a full pardon and inviting him to return to Egypt. Number 4, falling action. So Senuhe abandons his foreign life, returns to Egypt, and prostrates himself before the Pharaoh. So he is cleaned, shaved, and dressed in Egyptian linen, effectively erasing his years as a foreign. So to the following invitation from the Pharaoh, so Senuhe gave up his life or his wealth and leadership in Rit-Jino, and he travels back to the Egyptian border to where he is welcomed by the royal officials and escorted back to the palace to face for the king. Number 5, resolution. So Senuhe is granted a high position and a luxury tomb. So he lives out his days in peace, waiting for a proper Egyptian burial. So as he gets older, so Senuhe is warmly received by Pharaoh Senuhe I, and he is given a fine house, and most importantly, a royal tomb is prepared for him, so ensuring that he will have a proper Egyptian burial and a peaceful afterlife in his homeland. Conflict. Internal. Man versus Self. Senuhe's struggle with his own guilt and fear, and he doesn't know why he fled, and he spends his life trying to reconcile his love for Egypt with his status as a runaway. External, man versus society, nature. Senuhe versus the harsh desert environment. Senuhe versus the hero of Red Gino, physical combat. Then cultural, Egyptian versus foreigner. The tension between Senuhe's Egyptian upbringing and his life among barbarians.
Good day, everyone. I am Risa Lindsay Havenal, and I am going to continue the discussion of Mr. Vinci about the social condition, plot, and the conflict about the tale of the Senuhe. Now, let's proceed to its symbolism. First, the tomb, the ultimate symbol of peace and the afterlife. In Egyptian culture, a tomb in Egypt was the only way to ensure eternal life. So, to the tale of the Senuhi, a tomb isn't just a grave. It represents home and safety forever. Egyptians believed you could only reach heaven if you were buried in your homeland. Next, the clothing or hair. Sinuhe's transition from a long-haired, greasy foreigner back to a shaved, linen-wearing Egyptian symbolizes his return to civilization. So, this shows his change in identity. When he looks messy and has long hair, he is an outsider. But when he shaves and wears clean linen again, he is finally back as an Egyptian. So the last one is water or thirst. In the desert, thirst symbolizes the taste of death and the absence of the Nile's life-giving order. So thirst represents suffering and being lost. Water is linked to the Nile River, so being thirsty means Sinuhe is far away from the life and the comfort of his country. So now, let's proceed to the themes of the tale of the Senuhe. So first is the national identity, the belief that an Egyptian is only truly themselves when they are on Egyptian soil. So this is the idea that where you belong matters. Senuhi was successful in other lands, but he felt like he wasn't his true self until he stood on Egyptian ground. So next is the divine providence. Sinuhe believes a god planned his flight and his eventual return to test and then reward him. So this means fate or destiny. Sinuhe thinks his mistakes and his journey weren't accidents, but were part of a God's plan to teach him a lesson. Last one is the mercy of the king. The story serves as propaganda, showing the pharaoh as a fatherly figure who is willing to forgive even those who desert him. So the story is meant to make the king look good. It shows that the pharaoh is kind and forgiving like a father rather than a scary or angry ruler. So now, the point of view or the POV of the tale of the Senuhe. So, the tale of the Senuhe used the first person point of view. The story is told through Senuhe's own eyes. So, ato man nabantayan nga inigbasa nato sa story na ay maka-indicate ito nga I. So, we get to know Senuhe's private thoughts and feelings. So, this is crucial because it allows the reader to see his vulnerability and the internal psychological pressure he feels, making him a more relatable anti-hero than the typical stoic figures of ancient myth. So usually ancient heroes are shown as perfect and fearless. So because we see Sinuhe's fears and mistakes, he feels more like a real person that we can relate to. So, to sum up everything that we discussed so far, the tale of Senuhi transcends its ancient origins to become a timeless meditation on the human condition, illustrating that no amount of worldly success can replace the profound need for belonging and cultural identity. So this means that the story is still important today. So the tale of the Senuhe is still important today. It teaches us that money and success don't matter if you don't feel like you belong somewhere. Sinuhe's journey from a high-ranking official to a desperate exile and finally back to a restored son of the Nile serve as powerful testament to the restorative power of grace and homecoming. So the story ends with a message of hope. It shows that no matter how far you wander or how many mistakes you make, you can always be forgiven and find your way back home. So that's all for my part. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're having a good day.